Okay, so our next speaker will be Representative Joshua Boshi. To give you a little background information, he was first elected to the North Dakota House of Representatives in 2012. He was re-elected for a second term in November of 2016. He currently serves as the elected House Minority Leader. When he's not representing his Fargo when he's not representing his North Fargo constituents in Bismarck. Josh serves as a sales manager for Hatch Realty, leading 20 real estate agents. Representative Boshi's legislative focuses has been on passing fully inclusive, statewide non-discriminatory stature, increasing opportunities for North Dakota small businesses, enhancing early child development education and child services throughout the state, campaigning for finance reforms, expanding access to local foods, and developing a statewide commitment to moving North Dakotans out of poverty. He currently serves on the board of directors for Prairie Public Broadcasting, Act Up Theater, and FM Pride Planning Committee. He lives in North Fargo with his partner Zach and Coda. And of course, this is their miniature dachshund that rules the roost. So since he is currently serving in Bismarck, he will have to be videoing in, as you can see him right here. And please help me welcome Joshua Boshi to the presentation.
Well, thank you. You guys can hear me okay? We good? All right. Thanks, Brady. Well, it's great to be with you all. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to greet you and spend some time with you as you kick off Impact Fargo today. I think one of the great things, though, is that you all get to be inside City Hall instead of sandbagging to protect City Hall. So our flood prevention work that we're trying to continue to do here in Bismarck is paying off, so you guys can be here today and helping us out. So I'm excited to visit with you all about the future of Fargo. I represent part of North Fargo. My district specifically goes from 5th Avenue North, which is about the railroad tracks on the north side of downtown, all the way up to 32nd Avenue North, and then basically University Drive to the river. So my district's really only 27 blocks by 16 blocks. But I have legislative colleagues who represent 6 entire counties as part of their legislative district. So I'm fortunate to really be able to get to know each and one of the families in my neighborhood, get to know the teachers and the nurses, the law enforcement who all work there, and try to make sure I'm representing our district pretty well out here in Bismarck. My involvement leadership really kicked off being in the shoes that you all are in right now. I was engaged in leadership programs in high school. At the time, a lot of it was just to be with my friends and doing things that I enjoyed to do, not realizing that it was setting me up for a future in which now I find myself one of 141 people in Bismarck representing North Dakotans throughout the state. I was involved in Key Club, student council, speech. Once I got to college, I was involved in my fraternity, Alpha Tau Omega, and then student government and a variety of other student leadership jobs while at North Dakota State University. But what really surprises me is as I reflect back on those experiences is how each one of those experiences prepared me to be a legislator. And maybe not even just a legislator, but also to be a sales manager at Hatch Realty. Leadership in my mindset really comes from the relationships we build, making sure that we're connected to one another to improve our greater community. And so, as you continue your discussions through today with one another, but also as you go home and you're involved in your organizations at your respective school, as you continue to commit to service, to leadership, to civic engagement, it's setting a foundation, and I'm pretty confident at least one of you in the room there will be sitting where I'm sitting today, if not many more of you. And so while I know you're not there in those positions to someday be a legislator or a congressperson or a president of the United States, just know that the good work that you're doing now is really preparing you for a solid future as you move forward. As I travel the country, whether as a legislator or a realtor or the other hats that I wear in our community, a lot of times people say, "Why Fargo? Why do you still live in North Dakota?" Especially as someone who is considered a progressive, both politically and the values that I live every day. And my answer truly is that, is I see Fargo as a progressive city, not necessarily always from the political standpoint, but from a city that's trying to move forward. We are a city that respects diversity. We are constantly engaged in trying to figure out how we can do things better, how we can better serve Fargonians and our neighboring communities. And I don't have to look any further than my time on the Human Relations Commission there at the city of Fargo, when we were really working hard to make sure that as immigrants and refugees from around the country came to Fargo, we were able to make strong connections with them for employers, with faith groups, social services, making sure that as these people came to our communities, oftentimes from war-torn countries or years, if not decades, in refugee camps, that they were welcomed warmly here, even if it was 20 degrees below zero. And so I know you experience it in your schools as oftentimes, it slowed down a little bit, but each week some of your schools had new students coming, and it's not always immigrants and refugees, it's new students from other parts of the country. Because Fargo is seen as a city that's on the grow and on the move, we're an attractive place for a lot of people. We are a city that at this point, I believe we had 9 new people each week to the city. As a real estate agent, I love that because some of those people are buying houses and hopefully I can pay my mortgage with the houses that they're buying. But we're also knowing that Fargo is becoming more diverse. It's a community where we have a rich history of whether it's the migrant workforce that supported the agriculture industry in the last, or 100 years ago when we were founded, to the immigrants and refugees that we continue to serve today that provide such a strong support of our small businesses, our industries that keep Fargo vibrant. But also Fargo has been a community that has been at the forefront on a variety of other areas of diversity. When I think about myself being a member of the LGBT community, Fargo was one of the first cities to have a police officer liaison to the LGBT community in the country. And that was in the early 2000s. And still today, there's a liaison who works with underrepresented groups, whether it's the LGBT community, immigrant community, the Native American community, the disability advocacy community. And so knowing that our law enforcement for the last 20 years has been working to make sure that they build relationships with people who sometimes maybe don't go to law enforcement first or are fearful of law enforcement, to build those relationships. And because of that, we have strong partnerships. And so that just shows one of the ways that Fargo continues to lead. I think back to my first campaign in 2012. I was knocking doors in North Fargo, and that was a time when a lot of people, probably some of your parents, were coming back to Fargo. They had graduated from NDSU or UND, 5-10 years before. They'd moved somewhere else for a great job, but decided to come back. Our economy was strong. There's a lot of great things going on in Fargo. When I graduated NDSU in 2003, the conversation was always about how do we stop what we were called the brain drain. We had great educated students at all our colleges and universities and even our high schools who were leaving the area in large numbers. Now the conversation is how do we make sure that we have affordable housing and access to health care for all these great people who are coming to Fargo-Moorhead on top of the people that we're retaining. And so as you all consider the future of Fargo, I'm excited because I know many of you aren't people that are going to necessarily leave. You're going to continue. So the work that you do today will have an impact on the work going forward over the next couple decades. I think of the building you're in right now. This is a brand new building to you and me. We tore down the old building that had been around for 40 some years. This is the new building, but this building is built for the next 50 years or more. It was built in a way that will sustain the growth of the city and the departments to meet the various needs of our citizens. But because we had a strong foundation going forward, we were able to build a great facility that'll last us for at least the next 5 decades. And so I encourage you as young leaders, as people who are engaged in your schools and your communities, to think that way. How are the things that we're talking about today, the programs and the service projects that we're working on, how are they going to be sustainable for the next 5 decades? And I know that's hard to think about because most of you are anywhere probably from 14 to 18. So to think of yourselves as what would things be like when I'm 64 or 68. But by setting that foundation, you're creating that sustainability that makes sure that we're addressing issues that even today, people in positions of quote unquote power or policymakers aren't considering. We're seeing nationwide that it's young people like you who are leading and driving the conversation on things like environmental impact, climate change, conservation. How do we make sure that we are creating energy sources that are meeting the needs of not only the public today, but also are sustainable and have less of an impact on our environment over the next 100 years? Because of you, we are continuing to have really serious conversations about school safety. I'm 37 years old. When I was in your position, we still only had tornado and fire drills. You all on a regular basis have active shooter drills and public safety drills in your school that we hear about from parents and the concerns, because unfortunately there's a reality where it comes to school safety. But you're also helping drive the conversation about how do we make sure schools are not only just safe from firearms, but also how are they safe for people to express themselves, that they're able to get the mental health services they might need, and the role that each one of you play in creating a bully-free, anti-harassment school culture. And finally, what are we doing about workforce development? Though people in my position, we think about how do we fill these jobs. There are 30,000 jobs in the state of North Dakota, but oftentimes we're talking about it from the standpoint of what the employer needs, but we're not talking about it what each of you needs. So as you enter the workforce, whether it's your first job right now, or once you graduate high school and you start your career, or you go on to some form of college and then start your career after that, how are we preparing our workforce to meet the needs that you all have? Because you all are going to have a choice to whether you stay in Fargo or North Dakota, or you go somewhere like Minneapolis or Chicago, Denver, or anywhere else in the country, or for the world for that matter. And so I encourage you to be intentional about the work that you do, because everything you do has an impact for the next 5 decades at least. So I'm excited to hear from you all at the end of my presentation about some of the things you're all working on. But I think there are 5 things I encourage young people to think about in how you can get engaged in creating change. First of all, most of you are already doing it. You're probably the active students who are involved in student organizations. You might serve on some committees for the school or the school district where you're offering the student perspective. But one of the first things I tell every citizen of our great country is you need to find out who represents you. Who's making decisions on your behalf, whether that's at the city council, the county commission, in the legislature, or in Congress. Right now what we're seeing is that our people who participate in voting, participate in our direct democracy in the United States, continues to decline. And young people, when you all turn 18 and have the ability to vote, actually vote at much lower rates than any other demographic out there. Your grandparents, my parents, are voting at 70% participation rate, whereas young people are less than 25% of your peers are going to vote when they're legally allowed to when they turn 18. And what that means is when policymakers try to make decisions, They listen less to young people and they listen more to old people. And that's just because those are the people who are making decisions. Those are the people who are showing up and are going to evaluate us on our job and decide whether we should continue or not. And so I encourage you to think about, what are you going to do when you turn 18 to get ready to vote? You might live in a different state at that time, so you might have to register. But how are you preparing yourself to vote by knowing who represents you now, so that you can be more informed on the decisions they're making and whether or not those fall in line with your values? The second thing I encourage young people to do is it's never too early to start serving on nonprofit boards. I think back to my high school experience. I was on a committee in the community with United Way. And I know some of you are very familiar with United Way, but they provide funding to much needed projects in the community. The committee I was able to serve on as a youth leader was to go to 5 agencies that were requesting funding from United Way and learn about their programs. And United Way made their decision on who they funded based on the panel of 4 of us that made that decision. Each one of those panels had 1 youth representative. And so there's opportunities, whether it's United Way, whether it's the Fargo Theater Board of Directors, or Prairie Public, or any of those community organizations that might be important to you and your family. They're great opportunities for young people to share your voice, but also to help those nonprofits that either provide services or entertainment or support to understand what's important to each of you. The third thing is I'd encourage you to apply for commissions. The school district, the park board, the city and county commission, all have citizen-made commissions and committees that provide input. I served on the Human Relations Commission in my early 20s through the city of Fargo. There's the planning board. There's a program board through the park district. So those are opportunities for you to provide your feedback, but also be at the table when important decisions are being made, especially often on behalf of young people, but without the voice of young people. And so I encourage you to look at those opportunities. The other thing is if you're not someone who wants to run for office someday, how do you help elect good people that's aligned with your values? Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, an independent, a progressive or a conservative, how do you help elect people that support your values to represent you on the school board and county commission, in the legislature, or even to Congress? And you'll learn a lot about how decisions are made and how much the public, like you, often aren't aware of how those decisions are made. So you can help influence your circle of influence on how those things happen. And finally, I'd encourage each of you to consider running for office. We have seen in the last 4 years alone a dramatic increase of young people running for office and winning seats. Even though, like I said, older people are generally voting at a much higher rate than young people, we actually are seeing old people, and I'm saying old people, I should say older people, are voting for younger people because they recognize that it's you who's the future. You're the ones that have that they're they've lived their lives, and there's only shorter period of time than what you're going to be alive. So you should be at the table to provide input and be some of those decision makers. Just yesterday, the youngest candidate for president right now just announced, Mayor Pete Buttigieg from South Bend, Indiana. He's a millennial. He's 37 years old. And I think one of the most profound things about his announcement speech for me was when he said, "We live in a moment that compels us to act." And I don't think anyone knows that any better than young people like you who are engaged in trying to make your schools, your neighborhoods, and your communities better places to live. So that's some of my thoughts on the future of Fargo, but I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you all. And so I see that some of you have some paper and pencil, and so I have an activity for us all to go through. It's not going to have you jumping up and down, so any of you that are dozing off, it's your time to wake up, sit up in your seat, and I have some questions for you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you reflect a little bit. You'll write this down on your piece of paper, and then you're going to visit with people sitting next to you, kind of compare notes and see where you're at. But then we're also going to have an opportunity for you to report back to the group and to me, so I can hear and learn a little bit more from you all. So I guess the first thing you're going to write down 3 different things. So I'd like you to write down the 3 things that you think makes Fargo great in your own opinion. And then the second part will be, I want you to write down 2 things that you think would improve Fargo. And then the third and final thing would be to write down 1 thing you can commit to help make one of those 2 things come true. So again, you're going to write down 3 things that make Fargo great, 2 things that you would like to see improved in Fargo, and then 1 thing you can commit to help make one of those 2 things come true. So we'll take about 4 or 5 minutes for you to do that. All right, so I'm getting some waves. So I have a feeling you've finished writing your 3 things down, your 2 things, and your 1 thing. So now I'd like you to take the next 7 to 10 minutes, it looks like you're already seated in groups of 2s or 3s, but with your neighbors, talk about what are those 3 things that make Fargo great for you. What are the 2 things you'd like to see improved? And again, what is the 1 thing that you think you can commit to make one of those 2 things come true? So we are at noon. We'll come back together.
I said it's clean, there's nice people, and there's a lot of restaurants and activity areas. I think you're right somewhere once that we have like the most restaurants per capita. Yeah, lots of food out there.
I put there's a lot of outside summer activities, that there's opportunities in schools, and that the diversity is growing.
I said I really like the parks. We have good parks. The art, and the downtown area. What about improving Fargo? wheelchair accessible areas and more youth activities.
Have you noticed anything like specifically in Fargo where like it's not very wheelchair accessible?
I feel like downtown doesn't have. My mom's in a wheelchair, but she doesn't really get around Fargo a lot.
I guess I never really thought about that. That's a really good point.
All right. Are you wrapping up your conversation? Okay. Good, good. Well, it looked like you guys were accomplishing a lot. So I would just, love from a handful of you, some of your response to these questions, what you talked about in your group. But when you stand up, we stand up when you speak. Say your name and which school you're from. That would be helpful for all of us to know who's all here. So what are some of your thoughts? What are a couple of things that make Fargo great? Oh, I can't hear.
Oh, we're getting
There.
somebody the mic right now.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Do you want to see me or do you just not prefer?
Doesn't matter to me.
Oh my god. Okay, hi, I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm Andy Tao. I go to Davies High School. So the three things that I really like about Fargo is that we have many people from different ethnic backgrounds, and that's really cool. And I also really generally like the people here because people are always willing to offer a hand. And then we have many restaurants here, so a lot of food that you can go around and eat late at night. And then I think two things that we could work on is representation of those people from those different backgrounds, because I feel like many people in Fargo or my school, they feel left out kind of, and I kind of want to make them feel loved as is that I feel like that's a good word for it. And then another thing that I feel like we can work on is educating minors on certain topics, so they're not ignorant or they're just saying stuff that they don't know. And then one thing that I will say loyal to or just work on is minority representation and rights, because I feel like that's also another big thing that is a current issue in the world that no one talks about, but we need to, because that's not good.
Great. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chloe Bryan from Fargo South, and I said the good things about Fargo is our diversity, community, and opportunity, and things we can work on: involvement, youth participating, and youth and elderly interaction. And something that I will personally work on is my volunteering. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Lizzie Starosta. Three things that I think makes Fargo great is that it's clean, has nice people, and there's a lot of restaurants. I think two things that it would improve Fargo is more wheelchair accessible areas. There's areas in downtown where sidewalks cracked and it's really cramped and wheelchairs can't really get by there. And also more youth activities. One thing that I can commit to make more improvements is to attend more activities and get more youth involved in them.
Thanks.
Hi, my name's
Hi.
Tracy Aronson, and I'm from Fargo North High. Well, and
Go
all my
North.
good things have kind of been talked about, the community and diversity of people and activities. But my group talked about improving communication of the activities and things happening in the community, whether that be winter or summer, having an online calendar or somewhere that everything is there and you can just go look at it, I guess. Because a lot of things happen here, we just don't know about it. So that was our group's thing. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
I don't.
There we go.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know where the camera's pointing, but I don't know if I'm in the pan or the view. My name's Catherine Thompson. I'm a junior at Davies High School. Had to think about that for a second. So like everyone literally has said, the community vibe, the diversity, and the ways for people to get involved if they want to are all really cool things about Fargo. And I was in the group with Tracy, so we talked about more community awareness and having a calendar of events and stuff that happen throughout the community. And then also at our school, oh, I can see myself. Okay, sorry. That spooked me out. At our school, well, in all of Fargo, there's like Fill the Dome, and I think that's just such an amazing program. And I think it's starting to like die off a little bit, like in the community. So one thing I want to commit to is making Fill the Dome new and fun and like fresh for people, so they like, because it's been like 10 years, so it's like, oh, old news, but how to make it new and fun and fresh.
Great, great. Anyone else? There we go.
Hi, my name is Rachel Bergman from Davies High School. I just wanted to say a good platform for finding events happening in your area is Webland. One of my friends have been working on that, so if that kind of became like the universal thing that tied Fargo together, and that was just kind of like the news source that people went to find events, that'd be nice, because it's just a way to find events that are happening in your area. It's started by people that live in Fargo, so I think it'd be a really nice localized way to like have another news media platform.
Can you repeat the name of what was the site?
Weblen, Webblen.
All right, thank you. You know, you guys, several of you brought up youth representation and participation. And one thing I'd really empower you to do as leaders within your schools and your community, you're the first people we look to when the city's preparing for a flood, or when there's a need for a strong turnout of participation to help our community out. And you often are the first people to raise your hand. That's great. But I would say, and I would try to empower you, that when you're being asked to be the workhorses or the people who can turn out in easy numbers because we can bus you, and you're willing to help, but to also make sure that your voice, as you talked about, is at the table when decisions are being made about you as well. And so engaging with the school district, the school board, making sure that young people are represented on things like Frostival, so working with the Convention and Visitor Bureau, who plans a lot of these events. I don't know, are there youth representatives on there to help plan events that, A, you guys can know about, but B, that you would be interested in? So there's a lot of infrastructure, but are young people represented on that infrastructure? And I think that'd be a great thing for you to look at, and I'd encourage you to, if you're not there, insert yourself. We say in politics that if you're not at the table, you're being served. And so you're what's going to be talked about whether you're there or not. And so it's certainly a great opportunity for you guys there. So just out of curiosity, with a raise of your hand, if you had to make the decision today, how many of you would stay in Fargo? And if you had to make the decision today to leave Fargo, how many of you would leave Fargo? So there's more of you. So I'm curious, those of you that said that you'd leave if you had to make the choice today, would you mind sharing a little bit more about what that is? You know, I'm sure there's a variety of different reasons, so I'd love to hear what's that motivation.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I don't know if we're doing the introduction thing. I'm a senior at North. I lived in Fargo my entire life, and while I love it here and everything that's good about it is great and it really makes me feel like a good person to be here, I haven't really been to a lot of other places, so it's not that I dislike Fargo, it's just that I really want to travel and I want to get out there, and any cool things that I see out there, I can bring those ideas into here, as in everything we've been talking about today. So.
Great.
Going once.
Hi, I'm Maddie, and I go to Fargo North. I think a big reason why I would like to maybe leave is because one thing we can't control about North Dakota is like how cold it is all the time. But I think we can work on trying to implement more activities to do in the winter, so like especially like teens and stuff don't feel like they're trapped just like binge watching Netflix all winter long kind of a thing. So if we had something more to do, it might be a little more like manageable to like endure the really long winters, but yeah.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I was about, I think it was 5 years ago, Fargo did, it was called Go 2030. And it was basically what's our 15-year plan as far as community development. And the weather came up a lot as far as being something that restricted our opportunities. And a group of people, primarily young adults, started to say, why don't we just embrace it? Why don't we can't change the weather? What can we be doing to improve outdoor opportunities with the weather, to make sure people want to be out in their communities instead of, or how do we create spaces that bring people together during the winter instead of everyone just hermiting away in our homes and our apartments. So you bring up a great point, Maddie, and that's actually where Frostival came from through the Conventions Visitor Bureau, was that idea. So keep preaching it while you're still here. Any other perspectives on?
Hi, Tracy's back. The reason why, like, it's more of a job opportunity. For me specifically, I want to go into musical theater, so that's more of a definitely like big city like Minneapolis, or I'll be moving to New York in the fall. So it's kind of like you have to go somewhere bigger. And as much as I'd love for that to be in Fargo, we're not big enough yet. But I'd love to come back and raise my kids here, maybe. I don't know. But that's the reason why I'm leaving.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's winter a lot of the time during Fargo, or in Fargo, and a lot of the buildings here are kind of just boxy beige or brown or gray. It's not much to look at. So implementing more sculptures that, like interactive sculpture gardens might be interesting. Because a lot of what there is to see and do in Fargo is either going to the mall, going to the movies, or that's about it, or going downtown. And downtown is developing well, but most of the population of Fargo does not live downtown. So being able to drive around and see like splashes of color or more interesting architecture would be something to look at, because just the flatness of everything, and then the climate's just really harsh. Having something warm to look at would be good. I also think adding more height to buildings would be interesting. Like if the heights of buildings increase, then I was thinking perhaps painting the roofs of the shorter buildings to have something to look at or advertise on would be a fun, unique characteristic of Fargo that people might come to Fargo to look at. Because if you make Fargo a destination, somewhere that people are drawn to that has unique characteristics, I think that would help, stimulate the economy and also make people want to stay longer.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you all sharing and being honest about that. And actually, what you had to share makes me feel much better because it doesn't seem like you're running away from anything. You're looking at other opportunities elsewhere. And even some of you said, but I do hope to come back at some point. And that's what I think is so important is Fargo is such an amazing place. I spent the last year actually traveling the state of North Dakota. I was running for Secretary of State. And it was exciting to go to community after community after community, and to understand what makes what's their vibe, what makes them tick. And there's a lot of excitement out there, but as far as North Dakotans, we tend to be pretty humble people who are passive. So being bold and trying new things and saying, I want to put a new coffee shop in downtown Rugby, or I want to make sure that we become a destination place for XYZ, is hard for some folks. So that's why I'm so proud of Fargo, is because I think we've been a city that continues to push boundaries. We continue to try to be a better place for as many people as possible. And you all are a driving force of that. So I hope that you continue to empower yourselves and each other to be involved in decision making. And continue to make Fargo an even better place to live, work, learn, and play. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all. The organizers will certainly be able to send out my contact information if any of you want to follow me on Twitter or Facebook or shoot me an email with any questions you have. I'd love to connect with you. Otherwise, keep up the great work, and I look forward to coming home in a couple weeks.